Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Lonely Liberal Podcast. I'm your host, Nick Zankin, and I'm so happy to have you on this lovely Wednesday evening, almost Thursday morning. We got a great show for you today. We're going to be talking about all the drama between the US and Venezuela, particularly what's going on with all these vessel bombings. They say they're counter-narcotic campaigns and so forth and so on. And ultimately going to answer this question, are the US and Venezuela going to go to war? I mean, every few weeks we've been hearing, another boat bombed, drug people dying. It's a lot of drama, and it's something that hasn't really hit the news as much as you'd think it would. So figured we'd do a deep dive, learn a little bit about it, and because we got a lot to talk about, we might as well get to it. So this is an interesting conflict because it's something that's been building over the last several months. Longtime listeners of the show, or just people who have been following the news, may have heard and seen that the U.S. has been building its military presence in the Caribbean over the last several months, basically since Trump has been elected. F-35s, which is a type of military kind of airplane, has been going to Puerto Rico. There's been a lot more marine vessels in the area, naval ships and stuff like that. It's definitely the largest regional buildup we've seen from the U.S. in decades. Venezuela has also kind of countered this, right? We've seen major troop increases all across the coast, the borders of the country. We've seen some air defense moves, and this has kind of been the posturing for a while. But then things really escalated when the U.S. started to bomb different vessels or boats. Vessels is the more formal way, but boats is just too fun. So over the last few months, the Reuters has confirmed at least 6 strikes on vessels near Venezuela, with additional strikes in the Caribbean and the Pacific. All in all, these strikes have killed over 60 people, and it's been a pretty big deal, right? So the U.S. claims that these are counter-narcotic attacks. So these are people or narco-terrorist attacks. So basically, these are people who are trying to bring drugs into the United States, and they have some intel on that, and that's why they're justified to just randomly bomb these different boats. So it is important to say that these things, to this point, well, definitely violent aggressions, aren't what you'd call a war, right? Wars, formal declaration and stuff like that. Sometimes these words get thrown around, and they can kind of be used with like a vibe thing, but you would this wouldn't constitute as a war. Ironically, I mean, a lot of the conflicts that Trump has even been helpful in resolving, the thing in Cambodia and Thailand, are similar in this nature, not a war, but he's countered them as wars that he's ended. But that is neither here nor there. We actually already did an episode about that a few weeks ago about the Nobel stuff, so check that out if you're interested. So as the U.S. kind of casts these kind of larger scale narco-terrorist networks that they say linked to Venezuela, they've been getting a lot more aggressive, with these strikes. Now, the UN and other international organizations have said, okay, you can't just strike boats in international waters. You're not the world's police force. Who says they're going to, freaking United States? Additionally, other countries in South America haven't loved this. I mean, you can see that this seems like, is this unlawful force? Particularly Colombia has been a pretty vocal critic of these vessel strikes. President Gustavo Petro has said that potentially Colombians have been killed in these strikes, and they've been using the word murder a lot, which, is definitely something that could not only hurt diplomacy and diplomatic kind of peace, but big drama. But Venezuela and the U.S. have had a complicated history over a long time. The current president of Venezuela, Maduro, he's been someone that the Trump administration has been pretty vocal about their dislike for, and recently Venezuela has been having some drama with its oil. So people will know that Venezuela is a massive oil producer. That's true. They've been it for a long time. But recently, they've kind of revived these claims over a pretty large chunk of the country of Guyana, a neighboring country. There's this region called the Essequibo region, which is basically 2/3 of the country. And there's major oil reserves there. And so recently like I said, they've used referendums, different administrative moves, military presence to basically try to claim these areas, especially the offshore oil and gas kind of drills and stuff like that. And this has been obviously a big piece of drama, right, for the region. So this has caused a lot of drama. The oil markets are very contentious, and any type of kind of, Venezuelan aggression in terms of getting more oil to themselves could draw criticism from the West. Also, there is just constant political drama in Venezuela, in the capital of Caracas, the capital of Venezuela. So, they have elections. They're disputed all the time. The opponents are considered to be repressed. There's all these different posturings of different cartels and drugs. People don't even know what their relationship is. The U.S. like I said, and Venezuela just do not have a great relationship. So when you have this kind of context of just tension in the region already from these different kind of problems with Guyana, with the just general political stress that is pretty consistent in Venezuela, at least in the recent times. And then all of a sudden, the U.S. starts bringing fighter jets and different, naval ships all around and submarines and stuff like that. It freaks people out, right? They would argue that it's for deterrence, like we're trying to, prevent anything from happening. We're sick of, whatever Venezuela is doing. Obviously, the Venezuelan position would be this is aggression. So from a legal and more political side of things, the U.S. has a lot of laws that will lead to scrutiny, and has led to some scrutiny, saying that you can't just bomb things unless you say it's self-defense or stuff like that. That's why you're hearing the Trump administration say this, anti-narcotic defense, because they're saying that, this is self-defense in a way, right? It's, international law is interesting. It's not always clear in these things, and, it's obviously a complicated legal system. It's the international law, but, this kind of blurry line between a show of force, unlawful threats, and actual defense is very vague. But, I could totally understand, why it could be argued that this is just bombing boats in international water, because quite literally that is what is happening. Additionally, we're seeing this kind of conflict become kind of not just happening in a kind of local level. We're seeing this kind of spill over into more international affairs. So, like I said, Maduro, the president of Venezuela, documents reported by Washington Post showed that he actually called Russia and China and Iran for missiles, radars, drones, aircraft parts, basically just military support specifically related to what we've been talking about in the last 10 minutes. And what's even potentially more concerning is that a Russian cargo aircraft came to Venezuela. And while we don't know if they actually delivered military assistance, it's unfortunate timing. It's also, this kind of plea for help has actually gotten a response from Russia. Russia has publicly condemned what the U.S. is doing. And Beijing has kind of been what they typically are, like, neutral and not really wanting to get involved. I do wonder if, Moscow could really get involved in this with what they're dealing with in Ukraine. But, still something to keep an eye on. It's interesting because these things, like a lot of conflicts, have almost a certain kind of pattern of escalation, right? So the current level, you could say, on the ladder, right, the lower ladder, is these intercepts, aka vessel strikes, more seizures, more sanctions, stuff like this. Now, when I say low rung, I mean it's the first kind of step because it's where we are. It's not to say that this isn't a big deal. It's just to say, like, this is the starting place because that's where we are, right? Now, what would be a sign of escalation would be not only more strikes on different vessels, but if, different types of exclusion zones get made, if they start striking infrastructure, like stuff on land, that would be a big deal. And if they do and the highest level, right, which is unlikely, would be a sustained air campaign versus Venezuela, you start seeing real serious strikes, even open state-on-state hostilities. Like if the U.S., while they've been very critical of Maduro, haven't actually said, we're going to war with Venezuela and stuff like that. So if that stuff starts picking up, even though it's, I would say unfriendly rhetoric, at least definitely from Trump, that would be bad. So how likely is that? How likely is the war scenario, where this kind of definite conflict becomes a war? Probably low, because again, you would have to, and when I say probably low, I mean for a conventional war, right? A declaration of war. Congress has declared war. I mean, Congress isn't, the government is shut down right now, right? It's an absolute mess. So I highly doubt that. I will say it is pretty likely, at least a non-zero risk, that these strikes, lead to some escalation, right? I mean, the more and more people that the U.S. kills, the higher probability of drama. And they haven't really slowed down shooting down these vessels. And there's really no sign that they will, right? I mean, it's been very vague and unfortunate. So it's probably somewhere in the middle between an all-out formal war and where we currently are. And it really does depend if Venezuela gets the support that they've been calling out for, right? So let's take a look at what we need to watch for, right? We need to look for, is there more bombs getting shot, right? That's the first thing. Let's keep an eye on these strikes. Is there, attacks at sea, attacks in the air, stuff like that. We need to look how Venezuela continues to respond, right? Do we start seeing more Caracas, Venezuelan troops going to the coast? Do we see them going towards Guyana? Things like that. Any type of kind of response in that way, something to keep an eye on. Are we seeing different cargo flights? Are we seeing radars and missiles coming in and out? What is the traffic like going into Venezuela? Because like we said, they're someone who probably would requested some military support. And does the change in the rhetoric from the conservatives specifically change? So right now, they haven't really had a strong opinion. This has been a very Trump-heavy, executive-heavy type initiative. We haven't really heard, the Mike Johnsons, and Ted Cruz's, all those guys. You're really kind of rallying behind this. If we start hearing Republicans at the federal level especially start yammering on about how we need to go to war with Venezuela, that's a pretty big deal. And that's a pretty good sign that this is going to get more and more serious. And while the U.S. and Venezuela haven't had a good relationship since 2019, specifically because of sanctions and stuff like that, I would say this is probably the lowest it's been in a really, really long time because they're killing people. And Trump said that recently. He said, we're not going to declare war. We're just going to keep killing people. So we'll see how much longer he can do this. The shutdown and, food stamps and stuff like that, even Argentina drama, has kind of covered the news. I mean, Israel and Gaza, obviously Gaza and Ukraine, these stuff always is, front of mind. It will be interesting once, some of that stuff resolves. Will this become more of a topic that, becomes politicized and talked about? We'll see. I will say that it has so far been the lowest key bombing of another country in international waters I've ever seen. I mean, I cannot believe that the United States is freaking just shooting boats down, killing people with pretty limited proof that these things are what they say they are, and no one seems to care. I mean, You're not really seeing an outcry for it. You're not against it. You're not really seeing an outcry for it, frankly. You're not really seeing anything. You're a very neutral response for something that's pretty dramatic, if you really think about it. I mean, I say this on the show with Rick all the time, but imagine if this had happened to the U.S. Imagine if, I don't know, Portugal had shot down a vessel, an American ship in international waters because they said that they thought it was going to send drugs to Portugal. I mean, like, would any American be okay with that? So I don't know. It's something that's weird. I hope this helped get some information and kind of clarify where things are and what to look for, because it is confusing and it's something that I'm definitely going to keep an eye on. So you should too. And that's our show, folks. Thank you so much for listening tonight or in the morning or whatever. If you like the show, please give it a 5-star review, or, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube. Please leave a comment. I'm curious what y'all think about this. It's pretty interesting drama. And sorry if my voice is, I sound so serious because my voice is, I lost it a little bit, which is weird. What's going on here? But anyway, let me know what you think. You can also write us in at the Lonely Liberal Podcast at gmail.com. I love getting those emails. We'll be back on the weekend with Rick to talk about the news. And until then, take it easy, guys. See ya. Bye.